Hi friends, this is Tina and welcome to my new video. This video is of course all about me setting up my bullet journal for March, and I cannot believe that it's already time for the third month in this bullet journal because I definitely feel like it was just a couple of weeks ago that I set up my initial bullet journal setup for this year. So I don't know, this feels wrong, but let's go. So lately my themes have been really minimalistic and simple, but this month I decided to do something completely different and I went with pretty much the most time-consuming theme idea I could ever come up with. So I ended up going with this kind of elegant, dark, vintagey, romantic floral theme for March, and I'm not sure why I picked this one, but I remember that I was thinking about doing this for February, but I just didn't have the time or energy to work on this theme that I knew was going to be so time consuming. So I ended up choosing it for March instead, and I think it was a good idea because I am not feeling those like spring themes with those like super vibrant and pastel colors, etc. So I feel like that's going to be great for April, but for March I wanted to do something that was kind of not so seasonal, if you get what I mean. So as you can see, I'm starting with my cover page here, and I'm of course doing my pencil sketch first. I always do a pencil sketch. You won't see me painting anything this detailed without a sketch first. So yeah, I'm just sketching some of these flowers in this cover page. I was using a reference photo that I found on Unsplash, and I was pretty much trying to recreate it, but I know that I ended up kind of improvising on a lot of steps anyway. But I'm painting with gouache as always, and I'm just adding my colors to the palette right now. And I was pretty much using all of these colors in this whole painting and in this whole theme, plus some yellow and red. But this was basically me just mixing the first color of this whole painting, which was the background color. And by the way, I want to say, because I often get questions about my palettes that I'm using, today I'm using a palette that was actually just a plate that I found on a thrift store. It was a perfect one to use for painting, so I decided to go for that so I don't have to, buy these super expensive painting palettes off of Etsy or something like that, even though they are definitely good as well. So I am going for this dark black background for these flowers, and initially, as you can see, I left a little bit of an edge here that I wanted to kind of make a little bit of a gradient, painting the area closer to the flowers like dark brown instead of completely black, but I ended up kind of doing all black with all of my other spreads, so I don't think that was a necessary step, making that any lighter than the edge of this page. So yeah, I did the background and then I immediately went to paint the flowers on top. And the reason why I decided to go with the background first was that I wouldn't have to, adjust the shadows and the kind of values of the colors way too much, because I thought that if I was going to be painting the flowers first, I would just see them next to the white background. And of course, then the darkest areas might end up being too light instead. So I ended up just doing the background first so I could see, the background with the illustration that I was going to be making on top, and I could immediately kind of work on the colors more correctly, I guess. But I just went with this kind of order. I often change it, so I could have done the flowers first as well, but I thought that this could work better for this kind of painting. So I'm not completely sure what these flowers are, but I would assume that they are peonies. I was looking at the reference photo and it didn't say what they were, but usually peonies have these huge petals and there's so many of them, and in the reference photo they kind of looked similar, so I would say that they are either peonies or something similar. But I was definitely, like I said, I was improvising with the flowers a lot, and one thing that I noticed that was kind of my downfall with this whole theme was that I didn't sketch my flowers as well as I should have, and I didn't really fully go with the sketch either, and in some places it was totally fine, but I noticed that adding those little creases and adding those shadows like kind of underneath some of the petals and kind of finding the shapes for all of the individual petals of the flowers was definitely harder when I didn't make a full sketch. And I noticed that some of the flowers turned to be really messy because of that, because I didn't really have that kind of perfect plan going in on this. So yeah, I would say that if you are going to be painting something like this, if you're using a reference photo, by the way, please use a reference photo if you're kind of new to paintings like this, and if you want to make a more realistic looking painting, I mean, definitely like look at your reference photo enough and make sure that you know what you're doing, because if you're just going and painting this kind of painting without really a good plan, I would say that you can easily have the same issue as I had. But I don't think it turned out bad in the end anyway. I think this is one of those pieces that you have to look from a little farther away and just like appreciate it as a whole piece instead of looking each of those flowers as individuals and seeing kind of the little mistakes and things in them, you know. But you know, the whole March theme that I made definitely turned out to be kind of like romantic with its colors, and I would say that it definitely has these dark vintagey vibes with the like pale kind of beige and pink and purple shades that I used. I also used a lot of brown colors, and I also mixed in some green, as you can see, because I added those little leaves in the background as well, and I think they definitely balanced out all of the red and purple shades. And I tried to focus on making some of the flowers that were kind of in the middle of the painting and also, well, in the sides too, but you know, they were the ones that were kind of on the top of the illustration. I wanted to make them more detailed and kind of popping out from the page, and then I worked on the flowers and on the leaves that were closer to the edge and a little bit more of this loose way, so I made them kind of blend into the background, because of course the background is super dark, so the shadows are much harsher in the edge of this whole bouquet or whatever it is. So as you can see, I kind of blended those leaves in the back using black and just kind of blending the edges of the leaves to the background, so they're not as much in the focus in this painting, I guess. But yeah, it was definitely all about trial and error. I painted this piece for a long time. I actually don't know how much I spent on this. I don't have my phone so that I could check, but I think I spent something like 7 hours on this, which was a lot of time. And I also noticed while I was painting this, I could have spent even more time on this, because this is one of those things that, you know, can be as detailed or as loose as you want to, but I felt like when this was in such big focus of my cover page, you know, on this one page, you know, taking the whole space, I wanted to make it a little bit more detailed. But like I said, I could have worked on it even longer if I would have wanted to, but I didn't. My whole thing when I was painting this, I was trying to first add kind of the base color for all of the flowers, and then I started adding some darker details, and then maybe in the end I wanted to go for some lighter details as well. But this was definitely just me experimenting things, because at the same time, even though I have some experience painting, I still am not like the best painter of flowers. I'm not very experienced with them, so I just, you know, I was winging it for sure. And I think in the end this turned out really pretty, but at the same time, like I said, I think this has to be looked from a little farther away and just appreciate it as a whole painting instead of just looking at those little details and the flowers individually. By the way, one of my biggest issues with all of these paintings were colors. I noticed that I was kind of choosing random colors, and many of the paintings that I made just kind of looked either really purple or really orangey or yellow, and that was really hard to avoid it. And especially this biggest flower that I'm working on here, I had to, you know, make so many layers with different colors to get it looking right. I was really struggling to follow the reference photo and the colors in that one, so I definitely have some practice to do with those kinds of colors. But even though I made a really nice cover page here and the painting, I would say that my struggles definitely continued when I was making the calendar on the left side. Unlike with my recent themes, I decided that I wouldn't do a separate spread for my calendar, and I would rather include it with my cover page here. So I was torn between these two papers here. I was thinking about using either the brown or this red paper as the base for my calendar, but I ended up going with this red one for now. But my struggles were huge because I was trying to use white pens and I was using this Artcher and olive rice paper acrylgraph first, but it was not going smoothly. The ink was not flowing nicely, And the pen was super dry, and then I even got this really bad accident with the ink just flowing to the paper. And yeah, I had to make a new calendar, but I ended up actually not using this red one in the end. I went with the brown one after I had stopped filming for the day, but it's okay. I also added that little old book page little strip here on the left side of the spread. I really liked how that looked together with the calendar, and I will have that photo that I used for the book page that I printed down below, and you can print it for yourself if you want to. I think it's like a copyright free image that I found on Google. But when I was done with the dates and the days of the week for the calendar, I proceeded to make this tiny calendar on my cover page for March. So as you can see, I bought some new stamps, and I think these are super nice. They are a lot smaller than the ones that I've used previously, and I think they are a little bit more elegant in a way and a little bit more like thin, and I really like that. So I ended up just using a white marker and just stamping the header March in the lower right side. And I also just, made it look a little bit better with a white gel pen, and also just kind of corrected some mistakes that I made with my Tombow fudenosuke. And that was it for this cover page. I really love how it turned out, and I'm really happy that I ended up spending all of those hours making it, even though it was definitely complicated and the whole spread was a struggle. But here you can also see the brown paper that I ended up using. So next we're starting to work with my favorite spread in this whole setup, and it's going to be my tracker spread and my playlist page. And I really like how this turned out. I think it was definitely a struggle again, but I really like the whole vibe and the balance of the spread that will just kind of all come together when I finish this spread, but definitely a time-consuming one as well. I actually ended up spending the whole day on this one. I felt like I had already spent 2 days with this whole theme, and I had only made 2 spreads. So that was definitely, I think, a new record of some sort. I'm not sure if that's a good record to have, but it's fine. Like I said, I really enjoyed making this theme, and I think it's one of my favorites. So I think it's all worth it. So with this spread, I started off with the same kind of steps. I made the background black first, and then I started working on the flowers on the top. And I did pretty much the same thing as with my previous spread with the flowers. I ended up using even more of these like pinkish and purplish shades for these flowers. And I'm not sure again what these flowers are called, but I think here the sketching problem that I talked about with my previous page definitely came alive even more, because I had not really done a good sketch for these flowers. I felt like I was a little bit more confident with painting flowers now that I had already done my cover page. So I just, went straight ahead and started painting these. But yeah, I should have sketched it more and kind of had a better plan. I looked at a reference photo again, but I did not really even try to recreate it. I was just looking at some of the placement for the flowers and maybe something about them, but I didn't really have a good plan. So these flowers don't really look the same as my reference photo, but I will link it below anyway. I was just doing the same thing. I was adding kind of like a base color first, and then I was adding some shadows to the roots of the petals and just kind of blending them to the lighter color on top. And yeah, again, this is a mess. I feel like this was definitely even more of a unfinished painting compared to my previous one, because I felt like this was a tracker spread. This wasn't a cover page anymore. I can leave this a little bit more unfinished, but I feel like if you look at this closely, you can see even some white spots that I hadn't even touched with paint. But sometimes you have to do those things when your painting process is taking literally hours. I had to completely speed up this process a lot because I just had so much footage, and I had kind of done the same thing with my cover page already. So I think that if you want to recreate this or something, it would be better to even just look at the reference photo and trying to work that way, because I didn't think my process was the best regarding recreations and things like that. So I just tried to speed it up more because I just had so much footage and I didn't know what to do with it. And I also had cut some parts out of this whole process because, there's just too much repetition. I left one of the top left flowers completely without paints because I was thinking that when I'm adding those habit trackers on top, you won't even see that. And I think it was a good idea. One of these flowers took, I think, like almost half an hour to make if I was really trying to be kind of more detailed with it. So I was thinking like, if I can, skip the process of making one of these flowers, it's going to be great. But yeah, I just focused on again making some of those little leaves in the back pop with some of those little highlights that I added on the middle of them. So I basically did the same thing to them with the flowers, and I just made a base color first, then I added a little highlight on the middle of the leaf, and then I also went in with the black color, blending the edges to the background so it would look more of like these out of focus little leaves in the back that will just bring a little bit of color to the painting and nothing that much more. I will, by the way, have all of my used products listed in the description if you want to take a look at any of the things that I used for this whole theme. I was of course using my Mellow Days Reverie watercolor notebook as always. That is always my go-to notebook with my bullet journal, and I love using it because it's so good with paints. I will have my Tina 10 discount code for that notebook and for some other brands as well down below if you want to check that out. And then I was of course using my Royal Talens gouache and then some random brushes that I, just picked up, but they're not anything special really. Then I glued on top of my habit trackers that I always do. I always kind of have this same kind of idea with them. So there's this colorful paper, this rectangle, and then I'm adding my mini calendar on top, and I like doing it that way. So there's a little bit more color and some interesting look to them. Nothing too special though. By the way, I just recently posted my first ever art vlog or painting every day for a week kind of video, and in my humble opinion, not biased, I think it's one of my best videos that I've ever published, so I think you definitely should watch that if you haven't already, and I feel like many people haven't, so I think if you like these longer relaxing painting videos, you should definitely check that out. So yeah, that is in the cards and in the description, so you can check that out after this video. With my Uniball Signo gel pen, I made headers for all of the mini calendars, and I added them on top of these little strips of white paper that I just added for the header to make them pop a little bit more from the black background. Then I did the same thing as with my cover page header, so I took my white pen and just stamped the word trackers on top of the whole spread, and I also just defined the letters a little bit more with my white gel pen. By the way, if you have any good white gel pen recommendations, I would love to hear them. I think the one that I'm using right now is not really that good, so all recommendations welcome. Then I again added that old book page paper strip on the right side of the spread, and then I added these rectangles on top to represent the album covers on this playlist page on the right side. As you can see, my other camera is currently on the screen. I actually filmed this from another angle, but the footage was not on focus, so I decided to use this overhead shot anyway, but don't mind the camera on the corner. I've definitely been listening to some songs that I think that are more summery or spring-like, so I was really happy to fill this page and add some of the songs that I've been listening to. I think it's always so nice to, flip back to these playlist pages and see what kind of songs we were listening to during each period of our lives. But that is it for the spread. I think it turned out so pretty, and I love how balanced it looks, even though it's kind of busy with a lot of different elements, but I think it also has enough of those empty spaces to kind of balance everything out perfectly. But the next page that I'm working on is my content planning spread, so let's go and set that up. So I made a little border for the spread with my black gouache, and I noticed that it wasn't necessarily symmetrical, so I ended up using that same paper strip and adding it onto the right side to kind of balance the border out a little bit, and I think that worked out really well. If you have followed me and my channel for a little while, you might realize that I haven't done a content planner spread in a long time, and I have right now for a couple of months included it with my calendar spread, but now that I didn't do a calendar spread, I decided to do a full content planning spread instead. So I glued in that calendar that was left out of my cover page, you know, the pink one that I didn't use, and then I also added this little planning section for each week next to it, and then on the other side I added these couple of little headers for each videos that I'm going to be posting next month, so I can plan them and add all of my task lists, etc. And I think I'm going to be using this a lot. I'm really excited to use this once again because, like I said, I haven't had this kind of spread in a long time, and I think it will be highly useful because I've been needing more space with my content planning. I just realized that I'm not really using that content planning aspect of my calendar spread much, and I think I need a separate space for that, so I'm gonna use that. And if you're wondering what a content planning spread even is, I'm posting a lot on social media and I just need to be a little bit more organized, so I'm planning it here. If you don't need any type of spread like this, you could use the same layout for any of your school projects or work things or whatever you need in life. This could be definitely used for any kind of projects or planning for your life. So as you can see, I also added this little note section on the left side of the page, and yeah, that was pretty much it for the spread. I really like how this turned out. It was really simple, as you can see, but I feel like the color scheme from my other spreads definitely came through with this one as well. But next we are going to my other spread, which is going to be a little mix between my goals and my monthly summary and also my March memories. So as you can see, I again just did the black border for this whole spread. I decided to do it off camera because of course you know how to paint a black border with gouache, so you didn't need to see that one as well. So as the base kind of for these both pages, on the right side I added that brown paper, and on the left side I added the scribbly old book page paper, and on top on the left side I added these boxes with black paper. This is from the Artcher and Olive Neapolitan notepad, and then I added that pink paper on top where I added my header for both of these boxes. And by the way, I'm always, or at least always when I have that available, I'm using a glue tape roller. I will link a similar one in the description if you want to check that out. I don't have the exact one that I'm using to link for you guys, but you will have a similar one in the description if you want to check that out anyway. And since I just was in this painting mood, I guess, I decided to make a little painting on the right side as well. I don't think this turned out to be anything special or anything, but I just decided to paint this little leaf branch and just a couple of little flowers. Again, nothing too special or interesting. I just decided to do something here because it felt a little bit empty, and yeah, that is it. I know this painting heavy theme might be a little bit of a surprise if you have followed me recently, but I used to always do really time-consuming themes for my bullet journal in the past. I have just, like I said, focused more on these simplistic themes that don't take that much time, but I really enjoyed spending more time painting with this one, and I think it was a nice thing and just, you know, felt like I was going back to my roots a bit. So I am really excited to do these themes in the future as well if I feel like it, but I'm also happy to, you know, experience making some more simple themes as well if I feel like it. You know, it's a great balance between them. So now we are going to set up my last spread of this whole theme, and as always I'm making Dutch doors for my weeklies. I'm adding these black tabs and I added the week numbers on top of that. I always have the same kind of layout with my weeklies nowadays because it just works for me so well. And if you don't know what it is or what kind of layout I'm using, I'm making all of my weeklies at once using a Dutch door like you saw. I'm, you know, cutting the same kind of area for each and every week of the month, and I just have a area for my tasks on the right side where I can write the tasks and all events and things to remember throughout the week, and then I will have an empty space on the left side of the whole white area below the painting that I can write all of my diary entries for the whole week, since that's what I mainly use my bullet journal for nowadays. I love just, adding in all of my thoughts about each week and each day, and I can skip them if I want to. I don't always write every single day, but it's a great way to, incorporate journaling into your bullet journaling habits and things like that. And I will also always have a tiny calendar on the upper portion of the spread where you can see it from each week, because I think it's a nice thing to, just see the whole month at a glance, so you can, see the calendar any week, any day. And I think it's a great way to, add more practicality into your spreads. And I'm also always adding a decorative aspect to my weekly. So as you can see, I'm painting this little rose on the upper left side of the spread. It was less time consuming and less complicated process this time because I made a good sketch beforehand, and I'm really happy that I did. And that definitely showed me how I should have done that from the get-go with my other spreads as well. I also had a plan to make another big flower here next to it, but I was just not feeling like painting anymore. I was like, okay, I have done my part, I have painted and I've loved it, but I am going to hate it if I do it anymore. So I ended up just ditching that other flower and painting some more leaves instead, and that was a great idea, and I'm really happy that I chose to do that. I think that was a really nice process, and I really enjoyed painting this flower. Like I said, it was all about the sketching part and just doing it better this time, and I would highly recommend it. By the way, I'm sorry that this video was kind of me just quickly rambling over everything. I was just speeding up everything so much because, I had so much footage, but I really hope you enjoyed or have enjoyed this video so far anyway. I think you can still learn something from me even though I'm speeding up these things a lot. And I feel like not many people watch my videos to recreate my themes completely. I feel like people often watch my videos just to be relaxed and see someone paint and create their bullet journal setups. But as you can see, I added those little old book page, little paper cutouts in the corners of the, upper right side of the spread. And then I also added my small calendar there. As I said previously, I think this is definitely an important part of my weekly spreads as always. And I also have this little notes section on the left side. I don't always use it, but it's a great thing to add whenever I need to, add something to remember throughout the whole month. For example, like a little task that I have to do that doesn't necessarily have to do with any specific week. Even though in many ways this kind of painted black gouache background is a little bit tricky, I think one of its best qualities is the fact that it's super easy to fix any mistakes you make. So for example, when I was making the small calendar, I was constantly, making these little mistakes with my white gel pen and adding the numbers into a wrong place, but I could just use a brush pen with black and just, cover them up. Super easy. Then I'm also quickly rounding the corners of each of these Dutch door flaps, and then I'm adding my task list on the right side of the first weekly, and I'm doing this on my own when the month goes by. This video is coming to an end soon, but quickly before that, I'm just going to flip through all of the pages that I made in this one. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, leave a thumbs up, and leave a flower emoji down in the comments so I know you watched until the end. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye bye!